So, Sheila E, you were born, but before that you were playing the drums, weren't you, in your mother's womb? Tell us about that.
Oh, I don't remember it.
It says in your book you
I
were
know.
beating the bass
Yeah,
drum.
you know what? I say that because my dad playing every single day, while my mom was pregnant, practicing in the house, playing. There was music in the house all the time. I just think I heard it in her stomach.
This
And
is genetic, isn't
oh,
it? The
absolutely.
family is
Yeah,
genetically prepared to play music of all sorts with
pretty much.
Santana and
Yeah,
all of those people.
yeah.
So we don't really know whether we're kicking the bass drum on the one then.
Not sure.
Not sure, okay. But tell me a little bit about rhythm, because I'm a musician. Now, I interviewed the chap who played for AC/DC at one point, and he's pointed out they're the best solid four-to-the-floor rhythm section in the world, and he said the people at the back of the room are the more important. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not that anyone is more important than the other, but you do want to reach the people in the back. That is it does make a difference. Like, you don't want to, they always tell people not to just perform for the people in the front because they're already that close to you. And if you make yourself bigger, and feel like you're wanting to reach everyone in the room, you will.
Mm.
If you tend to just lean forward and just play to the people in the front, then everyone else gets slighted.
And you were also, long before your involvement with Prince, you yourself were a musical director and doing all sorts of things, and you musically directed for Prince. So what did you learn from actually trying to assemble the whole of a band and get them to play their parts harmoniously? I mean, that's an important thing, really.
Yeah, that comes from watching my dad play.
Yeah.
He's been a leader of all of his bands, and with my uncle, with his brothers, he's pretty much been a leader. So watching him, how he deals with musicians, in rehearsals, and then when I finally went out on tour with my dad when I was 15, and I saw him at work, and just thought, he's just a cool guy. My dad is so awesome to watch him and how he treats people. He respects them like he wants to be treated as well. He's so early. You say show up at a certain time. He's there at least 20 minutes early. He's never late. He's on time. He's always prepared. And all of those things that I've watched him do instilled in me made me a better person and musician, absolutely.
So isn't that the real thing? There's plenty of great musicians out there, but the professionals are on time as well.
True.
So tell me something about sort of what you learned through your wide mixture of collaborations you've had through the years. Some of the greatest people you've worked with, and they've asked you to play with them and all that. I mean, what do you learn from standing next to other giants?
Well, again, started with my dad, playing with him. I grew up listening to Latin jazz music, and he would bring, from Eddie Palmieri to Tito Puente to Miles Davis. But then at the time that I was growing up, it was a huge Motown era of, all those artists. And then everything about James Brown I loved when I first heard him play and sing. I bought his 45, and I saved up money to buy those 45s and LPs, and just listening to music, listening to all those artists. And then I think I was 9 years old, and my dad said to me, I see you're interested in percussion, but you know what? I think you'd be a better musician playing violin. And I'm like, Daddy, violin, really? So I went into classical music. So listening to all these different genres of music really made it good for me early on to learn all this music, and going on and on with, then playing with George Duke. I mean, that opened up a huge door, because not only did he play, he was from the Bay Area, but he also played Brazilian music, jazz. He played R&B, funk, gospel. He played everything. And between him and Billy, when I first started, they were playing so many different time signatures that my dad and we were both playing in the band at one point, and we just said, can you tell us where the one is? I mean, we had no idea. But what we did was we sat in the midst of all of them playing, and we just closed our eyes and we just started feeling what was going on, because we don't read music. So they would have their music and their reading all of that, and we just had to close our eyes and get in the midst of what was happening. Then all of a sudden, no matter what's going on, you know where that turnaround's going to happen again. And that's how we learned. It was just by listening.
And watching you just rehearsing, I can see that really there may be sort of musical knowledge inside, but also there's a lot of looking about, isn't there, and just signals going between you.
Oh, constantly.
Just to get that to happen.
Yeah,
Which, of course, all jazz is really, that's all embedded in jazz, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So your book, tell us about that.
The Beating My Own Drum, I started about 2 years ago. It took me about a year to write, and I spent almost a year with my sister-in-law, Sarah. And someone had said something, and I said, yeah, I think it's time to write my book. And I said, but I don't know if I have enough to talk about. I'm not really sure, I knew I was going to talk about my testimony, but testimony, how I grew up and what had happened to me, things like that. But I knew I wanted to share, that was one of the most important parts, as well as my family, spirituality, and things like that. So as I started writing, Sarah said, look, if you just, talk to me as we're having a conversation, I'll write everything out. And every time you think of something, it might open up another door, and then she'd ask me a question. Next thing you know, we had well over 300 pages. I'm like, I didn't know I had that much to talk about. And then we... Simon & Schuster said we have an editor who would come in and help us put it together, which was Wendy Holden, who's here, lives here in London. And she helped us put it together, spent some time with her. And then the book came out. But it was pretty interesting. It's like I tried to go back as far as I could remember and up to date as of, a couple years or so ago. The hardest thing was remembering the times and the dates of who I was with, because I didn't realize how much I had done so early on until you start looking up at the discography, or, I was tweeting and posting to fans going, could you tell me what year I played with it? As soon as I'd ask the question, you just look, it was night, and you had on a yellow dress, and I'm like, really?
So unless you have photographs at that age, it's not like Facebook, is it, where someone can tell you it was the 17th of June.
Right, exactly.
It's your memories sort of, they're represented often in photographs and other things, aren't they?
Yeah, no.
So you had to have a little help to
much help. But the thing that was also different about it was, if you're writing about yourself and you're telling a story, something that happened 30, 40 years ago, am I telling it based on what I remember as how I feel as a person now? I have to go back to that person. Was I really angry? I had to be that person. I was angry and I didn't, blah, 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 or whatever it may be. So that was hard. And in talking to my family, my friends and musicians, and people I knew that were around me at the times of things happening, I said to them, remember when blah, 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 and I talk about the story, and they're like, that's not how it happened. And I said, no, that's how I remember. No, that's not how it happened. But that's the part of telling your story. My story was the glasses that I was wearing at the time. That's how I interpreted what had happened. And their side of the story is totally different. And I'm like, wow, okay, I have to write another book based on their interpretation of what my story was.
Because I know you said to Simon Schuster you got sort of 6 or 7 of these books in
for
you.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
there's more to come.
Yes.
And in the book, being an artist, I know that spirituality and God is very important to you, where that comes from, but do you have any tips for any musicians about where you get your creativity from?
Well, but I know for a fact God has given me this gift. Like you say, it started at the beginning. There's just, even listening to my dad play and watching him play, I've never practiced a day in my life. I've never taken a lesson. My dad, he would play, but I'd just sit there and watch him and I'd play like this, as a mirror image. But I didn't take any lessons in school. I never sat down and let me just start learning how to play this beat. I'd sit there and I'd watch, and then I'd go and watch other bands play, or my dad would say, can I sit in? Can I sit in? Can I sit down? And what you just played, I'd emulate that immediately, just like because of what I heard.
And the Bay Area was very important as a sort of climate for that creativity. You mentioned somewhere in the book about you loved that area, and you've returned to it with some of your own sort of personal projects, with the Oakland project, etc. So what is it? Can you can you articulate what makes a sort of microclimate important for music from that experience?
Well, I mean, it's culture, it's family, it's your lifestyle, it's who you're surrounded by. The music in the Bay Area for radio at that time was huge. It was big because on the same station you would hear Sly, Grateful Dead, Santana,
And you were mixing
Tower
all
Power,
of that.
and That's Who I Am. All of that on the same station, really? Now we separate, we categorize everything. It's like, why? And that was the argument when I first signed my deal with the record company. I said, I'm not an R&B artist. I signed as an R&B artist, but to me, I'm a pot of gumbo. I am all of these things that I listened to and was influenced by. That's who I am. How do you categorize that?
So do you think the music industry is making a mistake by thin slicing genres into ever smaller pieces of bread?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Right. Coming on to your work sort of in a sort of voluntary capacity, I know you're going to schools. You said you get just as excited doing that as anything else. Tell us, share some of that passion with us. And I know you've got a club as well. So
No, growing up with my family, my dad would take us to foster care facilities, different places like that where kids didn't have a lot, or either they were abused or living, outside of their home or whatever. And so we grew up really poor as well, and we were on welfare, and but I mean that's what it was. We would say that it was poor now, but back then we didn't understand that meant that we were poor. And my dad would take his percussion instruments. We'd get in the car and we'd go drive to these facilities, and he said, look, there are kids that have way less than we do, so let's go cheer them up. And we go to these facilities, and the kids are sitting there really mad and upset and angry, which they had a reason to be. And we would at least try to get a couple of them to play some percussion instruments, hang with us, sing, dance a little bit. And we did. There were some we didn't reach, and that's okay. We tried to at least reach one kid at a time. The hardest thing was when we walk out the door and leave, because half of the kids want to come home with us, and they would cry. It's like, but you're not going to come back. And that was the heartbreaking part about it. But we've been doing that most of our lives. So my friend Lynn Mabry and I, we started a foundation called Elevate Hope, and now we have Elevate Oakland, and now we've just got called to do Elevate Seattle. But anywhere we can elevate, basically, we started in foster care, and we use music and arts as therapy to help the kids. But now the need is so great, even in the public schools, because they're taking music and arts out of the schools. Now we're trying to help put music and arts back in some of the schools in the Bay Area as well.
But what I like about that is you're letting people play at whatever level they can do,
absolutely.
which lights their soul up.
Absolutely.
And I think music education now on this side of the pond anyway has turned into painting by numbers in school anyway, rather than just do it because you can.
Well, yeah, sometimes in my clinics I say there's no right or wrong way to play, in a sense, because I play totally different than most anyone plays. I'm right-handed, but I play congas as a right-handed player, but I really play left-handed set up as right-handed. It's all confusing, but it's just the way that I saw things, and what I would hear, I would emulate. It doesn't look, the patterns don't look the same, but it sounds the same, as long as I do what I heard and get it done. So I said, if it means that your cymbal's going to be way over here, or your snare is on this side, but you play this way, whatever feels right. Everyone's walk is different.
It's something I heard from a chap called John Etheridge, who's played with Nigel Kennedy, and he knows Jeff Beck. He said Jeff Beck plays like Jeff Beck because he didn't know what he was doing. And this hand is the way it is because he didn't read a tuition book on the right way to do it, or watch the video,
Absolutely.
the Iron Maiden video sort of thing. Everyone can be the same. And that's something that we've got to learn to live with, I think, in a new age where everything is brilliant, isn't it? You can learn things very well, but then again, your individuality
is very important.
Yeah,
it really is important.
So, the club.
I have a new club, my second club right now. It's called the E Spot Lounge. It's basically Studio City. It's in the Valley in Los Angeles, so it's called the E Spot Lounge. We opened the last 3 days of January, so we've only been open a couple of months now, and it's doing very well. It's a very small club. It holds about 130 people. And so we're really excited about that. And we've had great artists already playing. Hiroshima, my dad, Poncho Sanchez, Ozomatle, man, the list goes on. Keiko Matsui. There, a lot of people have performed already. And we have comedy. So we're going to start at some point, like we've put in cameras as well. At some point we'll be streaming and things like that so people can see what's happening.
Fantastic.
And behind the scenes, yeah.
And plans for the future? You got the album recently?
My bucket list, yeah, I have a new record, Icon. It came out last year, but the record came out based out of writing the book. You know, the stories that I was telling, I was writing a book that really didn't have any music. It's like this, we usually write a song that's 3.5, 4 minutes long. This is a 300-page song. And then after a while, I started hearing music behind the stories, and I said, wait a minute, this should be a song. And then when I went into my archives of songs, you know, ideas, and I pulled up some things and I listened to some things, and I realized that there were a couple of songs that I had written 5 years before writing the book that are in the book because I was already telling my story in the song.
So is incubation really a key to being great? You know, letting things rest for a little while and come back to them? Or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes you just, you know, part of growing in as a musician, as an artist, as songwriting, you know, never give up. Little things can become big things. If you just save those things, you put them away, later on you come back to it. I've done this my entire life. I'll do little snippets. I'll write a word, or I'll write a sentence or an idea, and I'll put it away. I have books of just stuff written in it, you know. You go back to it and you go, oh my God, it's brilliant. That's going to work right now. Yes, let's go, you know, let's go in the studio.
We're back to rhythm.
Rhythm
we're
and
back to timing.
Is everything.
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 Sheila, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.